Well, hello, thank you for joining me today again on the Church History Trail. And where we are now is we're actually at James Fort, which is just facing Charles Fort. And we've done a few wee videos earlier of Charles Fort. Now you can't get into James Fort unfortunately, but in saying that, you can walk around the walls and you can see plenty, even from the outside. So that's what we're going to try and do now. So I'm going to try and go through this wee tunnel here without getting soaked if I can help it, because there's a big puddle at the end of it. But you can see the tunnel there, fantastic. You have to keep your head down here because you could end up knocking yourself out if you didn't. And I'm just going to show you some steps there, which we won't be going up, but just let you see. There's a wee track up the top there. So now what I need to do is try and get across this puddle without getting soaked in the process. There we go. And so this is the castle here. Now, of course, both Charles Fort and James Fort in 1690 were actually attacked by the Williamite forces under the command of the Duke of Württemberg and John Churchill. And John Churchill would later be the first Duke of Marlborough. And of course, he has a famous descendant, because John Churchill's descendant is none other than Sir Winston Churchill, who was the Prime Minister during the Second World War. And so that is amazing that John Churchill's descendant was actually Sir Winston Churchill. And so the Churchills have a connection here with James Fort. And so it was attacked by the Williamite forces under the command of the Duke of Württemberg, and as I say, under John Churchill as well. And you can see the castle there. The fort is absolutely fantastic, isn't it? Even though you can't get in, but you can still see plenty. Absolutely amazing. So we're going to try and take a wee walk around and see what we can see. And so the commander of this fort here, James Fort, was Colonel O'Driscoll, and it was captured by the Williamite forces after being damaged by an explosion in the gunpowder stores. Now, there was an earlier medieval fort here, and so it existed actually on this site before this James Fort was built, and it was named Castle Nye Park. And as I say, so it existed here before this fort here. This fort here is called, of course, James Fort. And so the old fort was occupied by the Spanish forces for a time during the early part of the Siege of KINSALE, which is the part of the Battle of KINSALE in 1601. And you also get a good view here from the castle. And so the old fort was captured from the Spanish by Sir Richard Smith, who led the attacking English forces of Charles Blunt, Lord Mountjoy. And I would assume that that's the same Mountjoy that the ship was actually named after, because if you remember, that broke the boom, which was across the Foyle River at Derry/Londonderry during the siege there in 1689. So I would assume that that's who that ship is actually named after, but don't quote me on that. I see a gate here. I've just noticed the gate, so I'm going to have a wee look through. Of course, the gate will be locked. There's no way we'll get in, but we can have a look through at least. And you can't really see much as it is. And of course, the gate's locked. So I'll put my phone in, see if that helps. I don't know if you can see anything there or not. It's lovely now. I mean, it was very showery earlier, really blowy. The wind has died down a wee bit, although it is still quite breezy. And so immediately after the Siege of KINSALE, construction then began on James Fort, the present day fort that we see. And of course the fort was named after King James I of England, and it was completed in 1604 at a cost of £645. And although Charles Fort was operating as a military garrison through to the early 20th century, James Fort actually declined in usage, and so it declined during the 18th century. Of course it's a ruin today, but then Charles Fort's a ruin today as well. The difference between this and Charles Fort is you pay €5 to get into Charles Fort, you don't pay anything here. But saying that, it's well worth the €5 because it's absolutely fantastic. And this fort's bringing it too. Now in 1649, James Fort had been captured by Oliver Cromwell. So Cromwell has a connection here as well. And his forces actually captured this without struggle. So they did. James Fort is lovely, there's no doubt about it. And the views around it, if you check out the wee video that I showed you of Charles Fort from over here from James, the side of James Fort, the scenery is absolutely beautiful. So it is. So that's James Fort. Fantastic to still have this old building, isn't it? What you're looking at here, folks, is a big part of history. It's a big part of the history of Kinsale. A massive part of the history of Kinsale. And so it's great to have this. And of course that's the keep inside. And then you have the outer wall. Now there's a plaque here. So we're going to have a wee look and see if it says anything on it. I'm going to do what I normally do, and that's give it a bang. Open up in the name of the king. I don't think they will. Let's have a look and see if it says anything. Well, there's not much information. It's just the National Monument is in the care of the Commissioners of Public Works. But no, there was a wee board on the way up with a bit of history on it, but I'll give you a good bit of history there, so hopefully that should suffice. So I'll give you another review of the castle, of the fort here, and then we'll wrap this wee video up. So there you go. So thank you for joining me today again on the Church History Trail. I hope you've enjoyed it, and God bless.